Hey everybody, welcome in to the recruiting rundown here on Gamecock Central. Wes Mitchell and Kendall Smith joining you here. We hope you are all doing well. We like to date these right off the bat because sometimes people will watch them like 2 or 3 days later and they're like, Wes and Kendall don't know what they're talking about. This is outdated information. So this is Tuesday, February 24th. It is 3:44 in the afternoon and Wes and I are here to talk South Carolina football recruiting. But Wes, before we get there, what's up? What's going on? What's the latest with Wes in your world?
Well, at this exact moment, Kendall, I'm a little bit mind blown. I feel like, did I hear a little bit of your singing voice before we went on there? Like when you were doing the countdown? I've never heard you sing before, but it was there. I feel like there might be a hidden talent here, Kendall. So don't know. Feel like you might be keeping that from us, but that is what is on my mind right now, other than football recruiting and other than the fact that Kendall here also went to the freaking Olympics without the rest of us. So what's going on in your world? Forget my world.
My world is good. The Olympics were unbelievable. Just the coolest experience in the entire world. I had the best time. It was so much fun. Everyone that has followed along with GC for years probably knows that I grew up a figure skater and then I work in hockey now. So the Winter Olympics are like my favorite thing ever. I love it when they come around every 4 years. And just to be there in Milan, I was in Livigno as well, which is in the Cortina region, was unbelievably cool. And everybody in Italy was so nice. I met so many people from all around the world. I have a bunch of new friends from Canada, Latvia. I made a lot of friends from Latvia. So that was really awesome. Germany, just like so many different countries. And it was so great to meet everybody. So had the greatest time at the Olympics. And I'm sure everybody had so much fun watching. Team USA crushed it. And we brought home the most gold medals that we ever have at an Olympics. So that was awesome. But anyways, we're not talking Olympics on the show. We are talking South Carolina football recruiting. And we've got a lot to get to in the class of 2027. I want to start off with some of the latest news, Wes. So South Carolina has a couple of commitments for this 2027 class, one of them being Amari Fountain. He is cornerback from Northside High School, which is in Warner Robins, Georgia. And he has an interesting story because he was a guy, and South Carolina has been pretty good about this, like finding some of those guys that fly under the radar a little bit. And he certainly did, but not anymore because some new rankings came out. He's now the number 25 ranked player in the 2027 class. I mean, he's kind of brushing up on like 5-star territory a little bit, and he made a massive jump. First question to you is why? Second question to you is he's committed to South Carolina, but with this big jump, how safe do you feel South Carolina is right now with his commitment?
Yeah, and so like you said, 25th in the country, you are talking about if he were to maintain that to the very end, he would be a 5-star. They don't like to give away as many 5-stars early on, but as the process plays out, ultimately there will be 32 5-stars. So you're talking about being very much in that conversation for 5-star status. And, I think this is a situation, we'll get into the rankings in general here in a moment, and kind of how it works. But just the word has started to get out on him as a player. And I think, talking to Charles Power a little bit, who is in charge of the rankings there at Rivals/On3, when they really kind of dove into the film that was out there on him, dove into the fact that he's 6'2", 6'3", 180 plus pounds. You look at the film, you see a guy who just moves effortlessly, can play man coverage, can play zone coverage. He is a willing tackler, which you don't always see at the cornerback position. And not even that this would play into the rankings, but I'm looking at it from a South Carolina standpoint, Kendall, saying this guy very much fits that prototype that we talk about for Torian Gray defensive backs. You're always going to see him really covet size, covet length, covet guys that he can play at safety or corner. I think Fountain is a true kind of lockdown cornerback that you can put out there and say, go play your man on an island, and we're just going to leave you out there and be comfortable with it. But I watched the film kind of a little bit more after sort of seeing how high Rivals was on him. And I just think this is a kid that checks a ton of the boxes, Kendall. And, other schools, they were already – I think the schools maybe – I think the ranking like kind of caught up to the schools a little bit. Like Florida was already heavily involved here. There's other SEC schools, Georgia heavily involved here. Florida trying to get him on campus for an official visit. Now, to his credit, he is saying, he's locked in with South Carolina right now. Obviously, we all know how recruiting works. Those other schools are not going to give up. If you're the number 25 player in the country, that speaks volumes. So I think you just generally have to say, hey, we'll keep tracking what those other schools are trying to do there, right? But right now, so far, so good.
You say that a good cornerback puts their guy on an island. I always put it like this. A good cornerback is like good concealer under your eyes, 24/7 coverage. That's always what I've said about it. So that's my little way to kind of bring it back. Okay.
I've never said that before, I can say.
Now you can use it. Hey, you have permission from me.
I will steal it.
Use it. Steal it from me. Okay, let's restate where we are with this 2027 class. I mentioned a couple of commitments. Obviously, we've got to talk about Jernard Albright, who is also a guy South Carolina is really excited about too. And you feel good about where South Carolina is with him right now.
Yeah, and, Torian Gray's got to be feeling great. 2 commitments overall in this class. Both of them credited to him, both of them defensive backs, both of them 4-star prospects. And Albright's coach actually spoke to Chris Clark a couple of weeks ago for us on Gamecock Central and could not have said more good things about the kid. Compared him a little bit for old school Gamecock fans to like how a DJ Swearinger fit in for South Carolina at the safety position. An aggressive kid, versatile, speed. He's already in the 6'2", 200, 205-pound range, and is a kid who, according to his coach, kind of has those natural leadership ability, hypes up the locker room, hypes up the crowd, just gets everybody else around him in the right mindset. So that's something, obviously, South Carolina fans, I'm sure, are happy to hear, too. Chose the Gamecocks on Christmas, and this is one, obviously, Kendall, we always say, like, it's never over till they sign, but I think if you look at Fountain's commitment, it was a little bit more out of the blue, which I always take account of how did their commitment actually take place. With Albright, he had been mentioning South Carolina as not just a favorite, but at times was even saying, they're my top school for months leading up to that commitment. So none of this stuff's ever locked in, but I do feel like Albright's commitment was one that he took some time to process and progress up towards. So, we'll see if he hangs on there, but I think South Carolina should feel good about where they are with him and really feel good about having this class off to the start with those 2 4-star guys. I was looking, the On3 Rivals system doesn't even kind of qualify you for the rankings until you get a certain number of commits. So Carolina's not like ranked yet for that 2027 class. However, I was looking at the average ranking or average rating of the commits. And as of a couple of days ago, there was like 3 schools in the country that have a higher average commitment rating than South Carolina. So you're talking about a good start to that class in terms of quality of prospect that you're landing.
Yeah, you love to hear that. And we were just talking about Fountain and how he just like completely moved up the rankings and is now the 25th player in the country in that 2027 class. Those rankings were just redone, Wes, which is interesting. And I think a lot of people watching might be like, how do you redo the rankings, especially right now as we sit here on February 24th? Football hasn't been played for months. The high school season ended months ago, and now there are new rankings. So why is that, Wes?
Yeah, and I think that's a valid question. I think it's something we see on social media a lot right now. There's some discussion today about a quarterback who committed to NC State, and well, did his ranking drop because he committed to NC State? Not to mention the entire class just got re-ranked, so it was a coincidence that he committed on the same day. So, Kendall, first of all, I think people forget, like, there's an actual committee who's having to go through film of all these players, and there's so much attention, so much energy on that prior class that was most of them signing in December. A lot of that's going into getting that done. Then you go right into the transfer portal. There are transfer portal rankings now as well. And so a lot of the last couple of months has been them gathering as much data as they can on these 2027s, gathering as much film as they can on these 2027s. And now you actually have started to get into, in January, you have some of these regional camps like the Under Armour stuff, the Rivals camp, that starts to allow you to look at some of these younger players against their kind of peers, their other nationally considered, players. So I think there's just a lot of data that's being gathered. It takes time to sort through them. rivals and Charles and those guys, like they have a very thorough process. They're even after they put the rankings together, there's like a kind of like the IRS audits you if you screw up your taxes. There's like an audit process where everybody goes through them again and basically says, did we do this correctly? And so there's just a lot that goes to it. I think people would actually be amazed at how thorough guys like Charles are. And it's not a direct science. We know that, but in trying to make it as accurate as possible. And yeah, they're gonna go through the spring. They're gonna get into the summer. There will be more re-rankings, but this is kind of the foundation. This is a big update in terms of a lot of guys coming out of nowhere and being now a high 4-star, like we saw with Fountain. You won't see that quite as much with this next ranking because now you've gathered so much data on so many players around the country.
Well, your next story, Wes, is going to be a deep dive into how these rankings are come up with and really get into the nitty gritty of it. I love that. Yeah, we've got more on GamecockCentral.com, everybody. So there's plenty always over there about what is happening in the recruiting world. But the update is always appreciated here on the Recruiting Rundown, Wes. We always appreciate all of you, of course, for joining us too. So we hope that you have a great rest of your day. For Wes Mitchell, I'm Kendall Smith. This has been the Recruiting Rundown here on Gamecock Central, and we'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.